what if Brandon Lee was never accidentally killed on set? I kind of felt this would be a pretty interesting topic to talk about since I'm a pretty big fan of the 1994 hit movie The Crow starring Brandon Lee. Now, to get this out of the way, I don't really have a lot of time to do videos like this since I'm pretty busy with other things in life. But as of right now, I'm not really doing anything spectacular, especially with this pandemic going on. So I thought, I might as well waste some time talking about whatever pops up in my mind. Now I may do more of these revisionist history type of videos in the future, if there is a little demand for this, and I'm not too busy with other things going on. But let's get on to the topic at hand. So I'm sure many of you that saw The Crow would know that it was a 1994 American dark fantasy action film directed by Alex Proyas, who would then later on go on to direct Dark City, written by David J. Scow and John Shirley. The film is actually based on the James O'Barr's 1989 comic book The Crow, and tells the story of Eric Draven, a rock musician who is revived from the dead to avenge his own death, as well as the rape and murder of his fiancée. And as you all know, the lead actor, Brandon Lee, was accidentally mortally wounded on set during filming by a defective blank, only 8 days before the film would have been completed in production. Unfinished scenes that were to feature him dealt with a rewritten format in the script, a stunt double, and digital special effects. The film is actually dedicated to Lee and his fiancée Eliza. Despite the several production setbacks due to Lee's death, The Crow was pretty well received critically for its unique visual style, premise, emotional depth, and its tribute to the deceased actor. The film opened at the top of the box office and attained a pretty strong cult following. Some say it only was a hit because of the tragedy, but would it have made a difference if that was never the case? So first I want to point out him already being casted as Johnny Cage for the 1995 Mortal Kombat movie. Originally he was supposed to be in that role, but his tragic death prevented that from ever happening. But I do wonder how that could have been like for him. Him playing a cocky Hollywood star who wanted to prove his martial arts skills were legit would have been pretty interesting. But I think he would have pulled it off, especially since he's a pretty good looking guy, no homo, and is a martial artist himself. Now, as for his career, I believe not only would he have been kind of a huge actor, but he probably would have been a real Asian American role model, seeing as how for decades we've had our long ridiculous caricatures of emasculated Asian men with foreign accents, which is something we still see on television and movies even now. Also, if you watch the other films that he's in, he's great. And then he's transformed into Eric Draven, and that was pretty cool to see. An actor turned into someone different, right? Of course, we see it more often nowadays. Like I said, I do love the movie. Aside from the aesthetic noir type filming, the actors really carried the plot itself. Brandon Lee, I believe, could have been a great actor in thriller or action movies. By all accounts, he wasn't just a good actor, but also a very likable human being. First-time producer and owner to the rights of The Crow lived next door when all that went down. He'd been trying to get it made for years beforehand, and couldn't possibly have been prepared for what would happen afterward. Action stars were a dime a dozen back then, so it's anyone's guess, and they were always a shit movie or two away from oblivion. But being Bruce Lee's son certainly wouldn't hurt his chances. Though I've noticed that children of famous actors often get work and make a living, but rarely have I seen any of them reach their parents' success, aside from a few I can name like Michael Douglas, Jared Harris, which is debatable, and Carrie Fisher. I've seen interviews with him, and he was the kind of actor who wanted to tell a story, and wasn't afraid to speak his mind. But just being the son of Hollywood icon Bruce Lee isn't enough to get roles, and I believe he earned his place to star and carry films. Absolutely, he would have been great because he wouldn't have settled for less. I believe he may have potentially given Keanu Reeves a bit of a run for his money, since he had the chops and same level of talent and indie cred, at least in the action genre run of the mid to late 90s. Sadly, we'll never know. Would the movie still have been a hit? They say bad publicity is better than none, so who knows? But I do know a sequel was planned. The craziest part of it all for me was my neighbor getting a call from the people at ILM offering to try and digitally morph Brandon Lee's face onto a stand-in in order to complete the film as scripted. I presume at the time it'd be a green screen effect combined with motion control camera moves, and this was long before motion capture technology. The tricky part was getting the okay from Brandon Lee's driving mother out of respect. Sorry about your son, but we have this gag we'd like to try. It involves... She came back with a huge no thank you. Now please fuck off, and that ended that. So with all that said and done, I still think the movie would have done great if the tragedy never occurred. It was very much a product of the early 90s industrial underground scene. I'm not sure how a sequel would have been received had he lived, though I will say had it happened, it probably would have been a better movie than City of Angels, which wasn't really a sequel, but more of a remake. City of Angels was decent, but Vincent Perez just didn't do it for me. It was pretty cool seeing Twee Trang as the villain though, for those of you who grew up with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and the soundtrack was still pretty awesome. However, The Crow is one of those movies I thought should have just been left alone after the first movie, seeing as how the sequels failed in comparison, especially Wicked Prayer, and don't even get me started on that piece of dog shit. There was no need for a sequel, especially considering the fact that Eric Draven had already gotten his revenge. What is there more to do? But it was what it was, so... But yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know down below if you were a fan of the movie, and later.